My name is Kevin Callahan, and I'm a member of the Montreal Irish community. I was born in the United States, actually in Rochester, New York, but I have a Montreal connection and also a Famine connection because my great-grandfather left Ireland at the end of the 1840s because of the famine. He was from County Cork. And he came to Montreal through Grosse Ile and then to Montreal. Fortunately, he survived, fortunately for him and for me. Then he decided he would go to the United States because he no longer wanted to be under any territory ruled by the British monarchy because of his feelings about what had happened in Ireland in the famine. So his son, he moved to the United States, he worked and had a family, and his son, my grandfather, actually became a member of the New York State Assembly, the legislature, and was one of the first Catholics elected to that assembly. And he was ultimately a friend of Eamon de Valera, whose mother lived in Rochester, New York, and my grandfather was active in supporting the Irish move to independence and from 1916 to 1922. And part of that, I would say, is payback might be the wrong word, but just the memory of what happened during the famine, and that no foreign power should ever be allowed to kind of impose that on another nation and other people, and that it shouldn't happen. So he was supporting de Valera and the Republican movement at that time to gain Irish independence. And so I grew up with a consciousness, very strong Irish nationalist consciousness, Irish Republican consciousness, that all the long history of Ireland, there were a lot of things that happened that were not acts of God. They were not just accidents. They happened because of certain political relations with the larger island next door, England. And I ended up living in Montreal, and my mother told me that was very funny because that's where my great-grandfather came through. So kind of the wheel had come full circle, we could say. And I've been very active in the Irish community. And again, doing a lot of support for the peace process in Ireland, resolving the conflict in the north of Ireland. I've helped organize observer delegations for the Orange Marches, working on different campaigns in support of the peace process, and I'm a member of the Coalition for Peace in Ireland, which is keeping the Irish community aware of what's happening with the peace process and how it needs to move forward. And while fortunately there's no kind of violence happening in Ireland today, the root causes have not all been resolved, and there needs to be further political process and progress. So I've been very involved in that. So I feel very strongly that I am continuing the heritage of my great-grandfather, who had to leave Ireland and came through Montreal at that time to escape probably certain death at that point, and that he made the best of his opportunities and did not forget his Irish heritage and transferred that to his son, who transferred it to his son, who transferred it to me. And so I grew up with that consciousness, and I've given it to my son as well. I took him to Ireland last year, or 2 years ago, for the commemoration of the 1916 uprising, the centenary of the 1916 uprising. So that is a long story, I guess, but it is my story, and I'm very conscious of how my great-grandfather had to leave the country, and how I would never want anybody else to have that kind of situation. And I was at the march to the Black Rock. I go there every year to the march, and I think it's really, really important. This is the only contemporary famine monument in the world, because Montreal at that time was one of the major cities in North America, and this is where the Irish were able to come. And that I think it's just important to remember that. And I'm very, very pleased that the Lord Mayor of Dublin, from Micheál McDonshaw, who's a Sinn Féin mayor of Dublin, was able to come and speak here with the Mayor of Montreal. I think the two cities have a lot in common, and the fact they've become sister cities is a good recognition of the solidarity that's existed between Montreal and the Irish for many, many years.